This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacey Cole, and Todd Michaels.
Diddy's team has called the 50 Cent documentary a shameful hit piece. Before it even aired, they sent Netflix a cease-and-desist letter the day before the documentary dropped, claimed the footage was stolen, and accused the streamer of handing creative control to a longtime adversary with a personal vendetta. Yeah, they did it, and it made for great television. They've threatened legal action. They've floated rumors of $1 billion lawsuit, and yet, since the documentary premiered on Netflix to 22 million viewers, Diddy hasn't actually filed anything against Netflix. He did, however, sue NBCUniversal for $100 million over a different documentary, and that case is now hanging by a thread after his own courtroom statements potentially torpedoed his defamation claims. So what's the actual legal exposure here? Does Diddy have grounds? Does Netflix? And what about 50? Personally, joining us to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. Thank you for joining us. Diddy's team has called the footage in the documentary stolen, but Netflix and the director say it was obtained legally. From a legal standpoint, what would Diddy actually have to prove to pursue a copyright or misappropriation claim over footage that was filmed by his own videographer?
Yeah, Tony, there are a few legal wrinkles to this one. So Diddy would have to show that he had rights to that video, that he had contracted with this videographer. And it's going to be important to look at what that contract might say, if there is a written one. And then on top of that, does that include rights to distribution? Does it include some sort of prohibition against the videographer not transferring it to other people? It's very kind of murky, and my understanding is there might not be a whole lot of documentation regarding that agreement, and so that's going to cloud the waters even further.
It's just kind of a prime example of why, when you're doing something like this, if you're going to have access to yourself with people, with cameras, with microphones, that you have everybody on the same page. You have everybody signing the same thing. You don't just hope for the best, which it seems like might have been going on here. Michael Oberles, who shot a lot of the footage, says a fill-in freelancer handed it over without authorization. And there's reports, too, that Diddy never had formal contracts with the people filming him. Again, does this go back to, you got to cross those T's and dot those I's, Diddy?
It does and it doesn't. And what I mean, Tony, is that certainly best practices is to memorialize a contract like this in writing, to say, hey, Diddy has rights to these videos that are being shot. It can't be transferred to somebody else. It can't be published or distributed by anybody else without Diddy's consent. That would be ideal. I don't know if there is such a written contract to that effect. That being said, you can still have a enforceable legal contract with someone as a general rule, if it's a verbal contract. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but then when we have a verbal contract, what were those verbals? What did each person say? What did they actually agree to? That's going to be a huge mess, and Diddy is not well protected in that sense if there is no written contract.
But wouldn't it just be a he said, she said kind of a situation? Yeah. I mean, wouldn't they just be basically a pissing match at this point if it were a verbal contract?
It very well may be, Stacey. And additionally, what they'll look at is if there are already writings like emails, even if it's not a formal contract, maybe they discuss the terms in an email. Maybe they discuss the terms in some text messages. Maybe there are voicemails. You're going to have to look to these sort of collateral sources to piece together, hey, is there an actual contract here? And if so, what does it hold?
Dang.
When it comes to public figures, it's different to a certain extent than just a private citizen, to a certain extent, as far as what one puts out in public and then what people comment on or what people make observations on. When it comes to defamation, that means he'd have to meet the actual malice standard, proving Netflix or 50 Cent knew the claims were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. How high is that bar in practice here? And can you give us a sense of how rarely public figures win in cases like this?
Yeah, Tony. So we've seen sort of an emergence of these cases, including with President Trump. He's filed a lot of defamation claims, but it's still a very high bar because you have to get inside the head of the person who allegedly redistributed this information in a misleading way or in a false way. So how do you get into their head? If they thought what they were doing was just depicting the truth and they're using video footage that hasn't been altered, there's no AI, putting words in his mouth. It's going to be a pretty tall order there. And so to prove actual malice is a high bar. And that's for a good reason, because we want the public to be able to comment about public figures without fear of reprisals in the courts. And so that's why there's that high bar.
In our comment section, Gen Z is asking, it isn't libel or slander. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so libel is generally regarded as written defamation, whereas slander is usually verbal defamation, but it all comes under defamation. So that's when someone says something false about you and it causes you damages. Here, they're using video clips. And so if those video clips are authentic, it's hard to argue that what's depicted as false. You have to instead argue that it's kind of indirect defamation, that there are omissions, there are misleading cherry picking in terms of the clips. They create a false impression in the viewer's mind. So that's an added layer of this convoluted legal drama that could play out. Like Tony said, Diddy has sued before on this.
Some of the bigger revelations, accusations in the documentary come from Kirk Burrowes. That's Diddy's former business partner, the person who was at the start of Bad Boy Entertainment, is the one who originally had like 25% stake in the company. And in the doc, he talks about how that was taken from him. He says on camera, I think that Sean, now in my mature mind, had a lot to do with the death of Tupac. And he ushered Biggie to his death. Those are some explosive statements or accusations to make. Is Netflix protected because those are Burrowes' opinions, not Netflix's actual factual assertions? And what about Burrowes himself? I mean, is that something that he can just say aloud on camera and not expect any sort of reprisal? It's an opinion, yes, but it's asserting something as well. What kind of what kind of legal stance is there when someone is making these sort of claims based on their opinions, based on what they've witnessed?
It's a really important distinction in the law, because in defamation, you can really only sue for misstatements of fact. A person's opinion is kind of just something to which they're generally entitled. They could say, hey, I think Diddy's a monster. That's not a statement of fact. That's an opinion. And so typically they can't go after a person for stating an opinion. Now, if that person is saying, hey, these facts X, Y, and Z happened, and I'm aware of them, and I'm distributing that to the public, that's where Burrowes might be in some hot water, assuming that those facts are untrue. But a defense always to defamation is truth.
Is the way he said it, though, is it being said in a factual way, like he did this, or is it, he's saying like, in my, being more mature, I think this, then the other one is he ushered him to his death. I mean, that seems a little more direct. I mean, we're arguing semantics here, but that's what would be argued in court, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And there's some gray area in terms of what is a fact and what is an opinion. And, I think Netflix will have a defense because they'll be able to say, hey, look, we're just putting forth the statements of another person, and they'll style it as the opinions of another person. But Burrowes would be the one, if those statements are untrue, to be more likely to risk some sort of legal action against him. But yeah, when it comes to facts or opinions, it's really a gray area at times, and you have to look at the context. You have to look at the history. They'll look at prior statements by Burrowes. They'll look at, really how direct his assertion was and whether he couched it in, hey, this is just kind of my feeling at the time, or this happened. And if we get into the realm of this happened, that's where you're in potential defamation grounds, again, if what he was saying was untrue.
The fact that some of these areas that are being discussed in this case revolve around murder, and if Diddy has nothing to hide here, obviously, you wouldn't be very fearful of things coming out in discovery that wouldn't be there. But if you are like you again, I'm just saying, playing the if game, if he is somehow involved in this, and he sues, doesn't that open up the grounds for discovery on a whole lot of shit that maybe he doesn't want a lot of people paying attention to or looking at, of legal mind?
Diddy sent his cease and desist letter to Netflix on December 1st. It's now the 12th, and we haven't seen a lawsuit. Is that the reason?
No.
Maybe, because if he did file such a lawsuit, like I said, a defense to defamation is truth. And so they could engage in discovery whereby he could be deposed on these issues. Now, he could claim a Fifth Amendment privilege against testifying, because there's probably no statute of limitations on murder in those jurisdictions. But gosh, getting into prior emails, prior texts, even contemporaneous with what happened, interviewing people who might know things, a lot can be revealed during that discovery process. So it's a risky endeavor to even file the suit, because you open yourself up to those potential revelations.
So why even bring it up at this point? Is this just a scare tactic to shut your mouth?
I think there's a few things. I think it's possibly a scare tactic to try to get Netflix to relent. They haven't. The documentary is wildly successful. But on top of that, perhaps it's an optics thing to sort of get this statement out to the public that, hey, we think this stuff is false. We are considering legal action on it. And even if they don't take the action, perhaps it lodges in the minds of viewers that, hey, this is Diddy has come out refuting what was said during these documentaries. And so even if no legal action is pursued, there's sort of a narrative and a PR piece to it that might benefit.
And that's how people are going to remember any of these things, where it's like, oh, isn't Diddy suing about? Like, even if he doesn't, people are going to have that in their mind. So it's the rebut. And it's a stronger rebut to say we're going to sue you for $1 billion versus just, no, they're lying. They're a bunch of liars. That sounds like it's a little more serious, a little more grounds to it. Whether it ever happens or not doesn't really make a goddamn bit of difference, because in the public's mind, that stone has been put into place.
It's happening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The other lawsuit that Diddy had filed against NBCUniversal for $100 million over a different documentary. That's now hanging by a thread. NBC is using his own words against him. His words of, I lost my career, I totally destroyed my reputation, to argue that the documentary didn't cause his reputational harm. How damaging is that admission to any future defamation claims that he might have against Netflix?
It's a problem, Tony. It's a problem for Diddy, because to prove defamation and to prevail on it, you've got to say, hey, I have damages, meaning this impaired my reputation. Well, if your reputation is in the dirt already, how much lower can it get, bro? If you were this largely considered a villain by everybody, and now you're considered a villain by everybody still, it hasn't really impaired your legal situation much. It's going to be hard to prove that reputational damage with those admissions from Diddy's own mouth.
Is this something where it would, if you're looking at this big picture, you're looking at this long term, and if Diddy's, Diddy, I'm sure he wants to stage some sort of a comeback of some shape or size, God knows what. I keep saying I think he's going to be a preacher when he comes out. But if you're going to try and play your long game and come back at some point in time, right now, wouldn't it make sense just to shut the fuck up? Just do your time. Don't make waves. Just do your thing, and then emerge several years later as whatever you're going to emerge as.
A reformed man of the cloth.
Because right now, when you're constantly like hitting back on all this, and all everybody's going to look at, all anyone has to do is like he shoots his mouth off. That's not fair. Here's the Cassie video. Watch. And it was like, oh, okay. Even if it's nothing to do with the argument, it's just like, look what you did. And it's like, that's how it ends. I mean, it's just, you're a horrible person. Look what you did. Would it make more sense just to shut up right now for Diddy and just kind of let people do what they're going to do? People are going to say things. The more you fight back, the more he stirs this pot, the more attention goes back onto Diddy. And it's that whole adage of, any attention is good attention. Any publicity is good publicity. It's not always. Or is it?
In my appraisal, he doesn't need more attention on these alleged incidents right now. We have like 100-some civil cases. We have this massive nationally covered federal criminal trial. We have these documentaries now. The more he fights, like you said, the more attention it brings to these allegations. It might make sense to just kind of keep your head down, do your time, wait for things to die down a little bit. Public will get consumed with some other saga, and then reemerge as like Stacey said, this reformed man of the cloth. Gen Z in the comments says Reverend Diddy. That might be the better play at this point, with just how saturated the public consciousness is with these allegations against him.
Can we go back to the amount of money that they're assigning to these lawsuits? How do they sit back and say, well, we're going for $1 billion or we're going for 100 million? How do these dollar figures get assigned to these lawsuits? I'm just curious as a layperson.
Yeah, sometimes, it's what dollar figure sounds the coolest. Which one's which one is going to make the biggest splash? Which one is going to get headlines saying, "Oh, Diddy's going to sue for $1 billion"? That's not. I doubt that they've had time to really calculate the damages in any scientific fashion. I think they're just kind of eyeballing it and hoping for some public traction with throwing out these huge numbers. That's what I often see in cases like this.
$1 billion.
Well, I mean, and well, here's the thing too. I mean, sometimes these cases work. I mean, Gawker was taken down by Hulk Hogan.
Good point.
So and everybody looked at that going, nah.
And that was one of my favorite sites. I used to go to that all the time.
It was powerful. I mean, and it was a video of, it was dark, but they don't always fall apart. That's the thing. I mean, and if you're suing Netflix for $1 billion, crazier things have happened.
Totally. I mean, you look too at Tony, at the Trump lawsuits. A lot of people, these were based on interviews, like the 60 Minutes interview and stuff like that. This is video content. This is not, some AI fabricating his words. But yet, he was still able to successfully maneuver himself and deal significant blows to these media platforms through this litigation. So it can be a powerful vehicle, even when all we're talking about is video content and whether it's creates a misleading impression.
And who knows what his financial situation is these days. I would imagine, trying to gather up some way of making money would be important to pay for these legal fees that he has. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe he's got enough and it's all good. But, if you don't and you're not going to be making money off music anytime ever again, making some money on a settlement might be a good way to fund whatever the hell you need to fund. And if sometimes it is just cheaper, which is the case, like with a lot of the Trump ones, was just, make this go away. Like it's going to cost more to litigate this, even if we win, than it's going to be if I just pay this and just say we're done. And so I wonder if that's part of the game too. You don't know at this point.
Yeah, it certainly could be. And one thing too, Tony, is that in these types of cases, an attorney might want monetary compensation, but they might be eyeing some other type of compensation, like gaining public exposure, gaining notoriety, that kind of thing. And sometimes they'll even do it on a contingency or partial contingency basis, meaning they'll render legal services. And if they win, they get a cut of that. If they don't win, well, they're still a super famous attorney now. They might get, 100 new clients, and that itself might pay in part for the services rendered.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
exactly.
Diddy is a client that you really want to have, though. He seems like he throws you under the bus at just a drop of a hat.
Hey, he had some like Mark Agnifilo and all that. He's had some pretty good attorneys, and I mean, that it just shows. I mean, no matter how, sometimes it feels like the darker someone is, if you're the attorney and you can shed light and make light stick on some of the darkest shit, it shows you're a pretty damn good attorney.
Good point.
Oh yeah, 100%. And me personally, I don't shy away from controversial clients. I've represented some influencers, and this gentleman David Lesh, who's kind of this environmental provocateur influencer, hated by many, loved by many. I represented him. It's all public, so I can talk about it. But yeah, those sorts of things can be opportunities for attorneys, especially those who are trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, and it shows skill. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it shows the ability of what a good attorney is able to do.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.